Bit silly of my part. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, La Fraise. I'm Noémie and today I'm going to review this super cute little top. This is the lemonade top pattern from Oh Me Oh My, and this is the first time I did anything from them. So it was a new to me pattern company, and I don't sew for kids very often as well. I basically have two things I've made for kids. I have the Cordoba set from Itaki, I believe it's Itaki. And I made a few raglan top from a free pattern that I'll put down in the description for the kids. But that's basically it. So very little experience with sewing for kids. I will give my whole review of the pattern. I just want to say, I feel like you're going to find my review harsh, and I want to start by, so I'm going on the website. The company is owned by Monica, who, you know, is a one-woman show here, so she makes everything herself. So some of the points I'm going to make, I think it's just due to the fact that it's a small business, it's a one-woman show, and so I understand that you can't do everything like a 10-people business if you're on your own. So I'm going to try to be fair in my notes related to that. I'll also make it clear when it's my own preference about other things. I really hope I don't come across as too harsh. I want to kind of like give a fair view about sewing this pattern. So the lemonade top and dress come in a size, so from 0 to 3 months, that's the first size, and the biggest size is 5 to 6 years. So that's not the pattern at all, but I was personally not super smart. I have bought a pattern where my niece is already the biggest size, and I think I really had, you know, with kids that are not your own, and like I always calculate their age, kind of like I take the oldest one and then I subtract for everyone, and basically I thought she was 3 or 4 years old, but she's turning 5, and so she's basically the biggest size in the pattern. So silly me, because happily I have another niece that is brand new, so she's going to be able to have all of the sizes, but just a bit silly because, you know, it's a thing where you buy a pattern, you kind of want to have longevity with the pattern, and here she's already basically like it's the last thing I could make for her in this pattern, so a bit silly of my part. The pattern cost me €5.59, which I think is quite cheap for a pattern. I don't know if children's patterns are generally cheaper because the instructions are easier or whatever. For me, I find it cheap. Like generally I pay more than that for my patterns, so $5.55, very good, very fair. I'm happy with the cheaper pattern. So the first big hang up I had with this pattern is that everything was in inches, and to be honest, there are bigger pattern companies that also do that. Here again, like one woman show, but like this, I feel even if you're one woman show, you could give also the centimeter options and meter options. It just makes it very, very difficult for me here to try to figure out like the sizing, the seam allowance and everything. Like I would never work with inches. And like you've seen in my video, when I make videos about like, you know, tutorial or whatever, I give you the inches and it's extra work for me. I don't know off the top of my head what the inch conversion is, so I have to convert every single number, but I do it for you, for a video that I get no money for. So here, if she's selling the pattern as a commercial product, I think you have to give the centimeters. Like many people in the world use this, and I don't know, I feel like it's a must. So already not having the centimeter conversion, that's quite a big issue for me, and I feel like there's no excuse really for not doing it. So one note here, I was like, I don't want to be harsh. I hope this is just like constructive criticism, but like if you are based in Europe, you normally use centimeters, like be aware that this pattern comes only in inches. And I also found it a bit weird that it came as one document, so you basically have all of the instruction and then the pattern pieces afterwards. So there's no Copyshop file or projector file or anything like that. And not having Copyshop and not having projector, I think it's fine. You know, again, like a smaller company, I don't expect everyone to have a Copyshop option, but I do prefer when you get one file with the instruction and one file with the pattern pieces. So I know it doesn't change much in the long run, but I feel like this creates more of a risk that people would like print the whole thing and kind of like waste paper. I don't know, I think it's a bit easier if you have it separate. I would have preferred two files, and I don't think it's too difficult to do that. I found that on the pattern pieces, the fold was not super clearly indicated. I'm really used to, it's always written like fold along the fold. And here she just had CF, like center front. I'll try to show you a photo, but like I just found like it's fine for me because I'm used to sewing and so I can figure out where the center front is, you know, like it's fine for me. But I'm kind of putting myself in the shoes of someone who's not used to sew. And I think the way it's marked, because it's just CF written horizontally and not along the seam line, for me it's less clear. When the pattern says fold written vertically on the fold, I think there's no question what's what. So that was also a little bit of a point I had. So one really nice thing about the pattern, it's not so many pieces, you know, it's like, feels like it's very quickly cut, it's very quickly done. I had a little issue while cutting the pattern, I will put it now. So I'm currently cutting the top for my niece and I just realized I've cut the bottom piece for the top. I've cut it in the wrong direction, so the elastic side is supposed to be this way. There's no give here, but lengthwise I've cut it the wrong way. I think it'll still be fine. It's just a little bit silly. Yes, I realized at this point when I was like, it's not really normal to have your selvage folded like this, is it? That is not where the fold normally should be. Restarting there and replacing everything where it should be. Little note, but the biggest size on the pattern is marked with little hearts. How cute. One thing I found a bit weird is that there was no pattern piece for the bias, and that's something I generally like when they make you cut the bias in the fabric itself. Here she assumes you buy a pre-made bias, which I've never seen, I think. I have used patterns in the past where you can also cut your bias in your fabric. Here anyway, the fabric was too thick, so I had to use another fabric. It's fine, like it's not a big deal. Again, I'm trying to be like, this is not a big deal. Just a note, don't forget that you need bias and that if you want your bias matching your fabric, you'll just have to remember to account for that as well, because the bias is placed in the notions and not in the pattern pieces. The instructions come with photos. I generally personally prefer when it's diagrams. I find it clearer to understand and, you know, to see what's happening. However, I have to say here the photos are very clear. Sometimes you can't see anything and they choose too dark a fabric, but here she chose a very good fabric for the photo. I thought it was very clear and very understandable from the photo she took. So that I have to say, if you don't like photos in general, I'm just giving you a heads up, but I thought it was clear enough. But however, and that for me was a big issue for someone who says you could do this if you've never sewn, is that she doesn't tell you to finish your seams or to press your seams. So after you make something, she doesn't tell you press it towards the front, press it towards the back. She tells you nothing. I have a big issue with that because of this bit on the website. The website says, you can sew it. When I was learning to sew, I used a lot of text-heavy patterns that assumed I already knew the basic. Often, the instructions were so brief and so confusing, I would just ignore them and try to figure it out myself. That's why I've designed my patterns with loads of pictures and all of the info you need to make a truly special piece of clothing, even if you've never sewn before. So yeah, so once more, for me making this pattern, I was totally fine. I know that I need to finish my seams. I can choose if I press them towards the front or back. I know I have to press them. I also saw from the photos that the seams were finished. I even tried to see like if in the intro or somewhere else she said, you know, the intro that no one reads, but I was like, maybe somewhere else she said like, don't forget you'll have to finish and press your seams. And except if I've totally missed that, I think it's not in, like she's just not telling you to finish your seams. And that, for me, you can't in one hand say that you are marketing yourself as a pattern that is fit for beginners and maybe even if you've never sewn, and then on the other hand, not telling you to finish your seam and not telling you to press your seams. Like that's, I just don't understand what's happening there. So that's for me, like that's a bit awkward for me as an issue. Again, like if you're comfortable sewing, that's not going to be a problem for you. I'm more thinking about the beginner person who's going to buy this pattern. And for my part, I didn't want to put poppers. I wanted to put buttons on my top. As I was putting buttons and not poppers, you really need to do it before you attach the peplum, otherwise it's going to be hell on earth. So just a little note, because she puts the poppers right at the end, which is obviously fine if you are using poppers, but I wanted buttons. My niece is 5 and they're really well attached, so it's not a choking hazard. But if you are making this for very young kids and for toddlers, please be mindful that buttons can be a choking hazard, which is probably why she's not using them. But if you want buttons like me, make sure you put them on early enough before you attach the peplum. And obviously when you place them, keep in mind the seam allowance you're gonna need for the peplum. One thing I found very difficult, and I think it might be my fabric. I'm not blaming the pattern at all for this. I think it's either my fabric or me, but the top stitching along this line here, this is top stitched, the seam allowance between the peplum and the top. I top stitched this, I kid you not. I did it once, unpicked everything, did it a second time, and then unpicked the back and redid that a third time. So, and even now, if I look at it too much, I get upset, but at some point you just have to move on. But top stitching, because there's the gathered seam, and like top stitching a gathered seam to a flat seam, it was very, very difficult. My fabric is quite thick and bouncy. Honestly, I had a personal nightmare doing this. But again, I think it's my issue and not the pattern's issue. And finally, but that's sewing for kids. That's not the pattern, and I don't want to blame the pattern, but I was really, really annoyed having to... So after you put the elastic in the channel here on the sleeve, having to finish the gap to close the channel. This is so tiny, and with the elastic in, it was not a lot of fun. I did not find this fun to do such a tiny cuff. And then the armholes, oh my god, like they're so tiny and it's gathered, and maybe I just am not the biggest fan of sewing for kids because everything's small and fiddly, and I just feel like my machine is so big and I'm like trying to squeeze things through when they don't fit. And yeah, I have to say the cuff and the armholes, I was getting a little bit over the project and I was just like, let's finish this. As you can see, the hem of the peplum is super curved, and for some reason hemming this went super smoothly. She gives you instructions. I have not obeyed what she did. What I did is that I did one line of stitching at 1 centimeter, and I used that line to fold it once onto the line and then once over, and that really helped me to have a clean edge. So really, really happy with the hem for this, because with such a curved hem, I'm not gonna lie, a little bit worried, but it went super well. So that's a very nice surprise. The sun is leaving. Come back. So yeah, sorry, I feel like I said so much negative, but in general, sewing for kids is very quick. I mean, it's such a small, tiny project, so it was quite quickly done. You don't need much fabric to make it. They're going to look incredibly cute in their tiny clothes. So I think a lot of positive, but it's also like small and fiddly. So just something to keep in mind if you're wondering if this is for you or not. Think of how much patience you truly have inside of you. And I feel like this needs a little comments on how this fits, but I'm offering this to her literally in November, like her birthday is early November. So I can't really comment on the fit, sadly, but if there's anything really, really major to comment on the fit, I will add it in the description as soon as she has it and wears it. If there's nothing in the description, then you'll have to assume it's fine, or that my sister never put this on her and that I never got an update. I'm very sorry that I can't try it on her. I don't have tiny humans at home to model this for you. I personally think it looks super cute. I love the contrasting binding I have done for this and the cute little buttons. I think it's very, very cute. There's a couple of points about the patterns that I have made in the video, but I hope that if you were thinking of making something for kids or thinking about doing this pattern, that this was helpful for you to know if you want to get into it or not. And if you've seen my video about everything I've sewn in summer, you've seen the super cute little pouch I've made to offer this into, and I think that's such a nice way to offer things. I've also made her a matching tiny scrunchie so that she could wear that that and be matchy and her mom has a top in the same fabric, so they can be matching all together. So I hope it'll be a present she'll really like. So I hope this video was useful if you were considering making this pattern. Give this video a like if you liked it. Don't hesitate to subscribe if you want to come back for more, and don't forget that you can make anything, including tiny clothes for tiny kids if you want to. See you next time. Bye!